Alright, the Russian Arms update has dropped for Unturned. Both parts are done. What is the Russian Arms update, in case you haven't played recently or tested out the update or whatever? It pretty much added in some new guns. A couple. It's about 10, I think, roughly. It's a lot. It's a good bit. It's a nice bit of content for guns. And we're going to go over the whole update, both of them, and I'm going to talk about how they're going to affect survival, how they're going to affect arena, and I'm going to be talking as if we're talking about high-level players, people who have a lot of time on the game, they know the guns, so we're not talking about the average player. The first gun, which has a damn near unpronounceable name, I refer to it as the Tech 9 because that's what it is. It's a Tech 9. It's pretty crap. 15 round magazine, semi-automatic, and if I remember right, it's a 2-hit headshot for zombies. I highly recommend not using this gun. If you happen to run across it and you don't have a gun, it'll serve as a pretty decent primary weapon until you find a better one. But I would not recommend running around with this gun unless you don't have a decent ranged weapon. If you have like a Schofield, a makeshift rifle, even a shotgun, I would drop it for the Tech 9. I would drop the Tech 9 for them, sorry. Because the Tech 9 is just crap. It's just not good. The Vonya. I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Vonya. I just say Vonya because I want to. The Vonya is a shotgun. It's a 7-round magazine-fed shotgun. It has, I think it's semi-automatic, but it has a long delay between fire each shot. But it's still a shotgun. If you're point blank, you're going to obliterate your target. But if you're anything beyond 10 feet, you're not going to hit the broadside of a barn. It's just not worth much. This is the same case as the Tech 9. If you don't have a gun and you find this, good for you. You have a gun now. But as soon as I find a different gun, I'm probably going to drop the Vonya for it. Next is the Bulldog, or the Uzi. This is probably the first of the guns we're going to talk about that's viable. It has a 45-round fully automatic magazine in it. I say fully automatic magazine, but the gun's full auto. The gun is pretty good. It's good for mowing down some zombies if you get in a sticky situation, and if you find a player, it can be very effective up close. It can go in the primary or secondary slot, like the 3 other guns in this update, except the Vonya. The Vonya has to go in your primary, which is one reason why it's so bad. But the Uzi is a fairly decent gun. I actually think it's pretty well balanced. And it can definitely be a valuable tool in survival. And the last of the 4 guns for the first part is the calling card, or the PPSH. Interestingly, there is no magazine. There's a drum. I'm kind of sad about this, because the PPSH does have a stick mag that you can use. If I remember right, it's a 35-round stick magazine, and I think a 70-round drum. But in game, the only magazine is a 60-round drum. But this is the most viable of the 4 guns. It has a decent accuracy. It pulls off to the right, but it's not so bad that it can't be managed. If you're about SMG range, like it's a good SMG, you have to stay within the SMG range though, or you're going to lose a lot of effectiveness with it. If you're using it as an ambush gun, it's more than viable. Same with the Vonya. The Vonya is a pretty good ambush gun because it's a shotgun. But the PPSH could probably hold its own in a fair fight, and I recommend keeping it if you find one. Now let's go back over these and talk about how they'd be used in arena. The Tech 9, if you pick this up in an arena mode, you might as well just kill yourself because you're going to die. The Vonya is laughably bad. It's a shotgun. We're talking about assault rifles and snipers. It's bad. Again, like if you pick this up, you might as well be dead. However, the Uzi might be a little viable. I think it's going to be around like the Viper in Alpha Valley. If we're talking about Monolith, the Uzi is going to have one purpose as an early game supply pylon fight gun. It's going to be able to hold its own if you're fighting in the supply pylon range, but if we're talking about fighting far off, then the gun's worthless. I think it's going to have a position in both of the arena maps, but it's not going to have a great one. The PBSH I can see holding its own in both maps. I don't think it's going to be the greatest for Monolith because, again, we're talking about long range, and the AK-47 and SVD just reign supreme on that map. However, on Alpha Valley, it would actually be able to hold its own against all the other guns, probably excluding the Grizzly or Timberwolf, but those are niche weapons that have to get a headshot to beat out anything at close range. The Skybox Enemy is probably worthless for Arena. These are pretty worthless. Not very valuable. These are mostly just fixes. I don't think any of these are really gonna. I think I never really knew you could sprint while shooting, but I think that might affect the people that did use it. I never did, so it's not going to affect my gameplay. And that's mostly it for survival and arena. And moving on to the part 2, we have the AUG, which is another weird name for some reason. The AUG, which, if I remember right, is actually Israeli. I don't know. I could be completely wrong. But the AUG is actually a very viable weapon. It's actually pretty accurate, and it has a pretty low recoil to it. It takes range ammunition, and I think it's going to be able to hold its own on both Alpha Valley and Monolith if it gets added, which I really hope these guns get added to both maps, or at least one of them. I would love to see how these guns perform in Arena. The Fusillade, I think that's how it's pronounced, basically the FAMAS. This is probably the best of all these guns for early game survival. Its burst, even at max sharpshooter, is still going to throw you for a loop at range. But its semi-automatic can hold its own at about a little bit beyond assault rifle range. You'll probably still get beaten out by snipers at long range, and you'll be beaten out by assault rifles a little bit closer to you. But it'll hold its own in between that little niche area between assault rifle and sniper rifle. It's more of a marksman rifle, in my opinion, but it can hold its own. It's kind of similar to the Eagle Fire. The Night Raider, which is the G36. This gun is probably going to be the least viable of the second part. The reason I say this, it has an insane pull to the right. You fire one shot and the gun just jerks to the right. And even with max sharpshooter, if you're firing at assault rifle range, it's still pulling way to the right. So I think this is going to be only viable up close, or it's going to be dropped for any other gun. Because the recoil that pulls it off is huge. You're going to have to be very close to your target. The Hell's Fury, which I imagine is not going to... I don't think anyone is ever going to see this weapon outside of maybe a few encounters. It's literally a minigun. It has like no recoil to it. It has stupidly bad accuracy. And that's about it. Like, it shoots fast. It's cool to have, but as a viable weapon, it's nothing more than a joke weapon, really. Like, no serious player would actually run this. For the main reason, it's going to be hard to find in survival. Even if it is added to an arena map, you're probably only going to get 250 shots with it if the developer decides to give you that many. And you're not going to be able to hit the broadside of a barn outside of SMG and shotgun range. Like if you want to hide behind a corner or something and blow someone up as they go by, like it's going to work that way. But in a fair fight, you're going to have a disadvantage compared to the other accurate guns. And the Echo, which is very similar to the Intervention, I don't know exactly what weapon it is, but it shares a lot of similarities. I didn't play with this much because I was too lazy to spawn in a scope, but what I did use, it was a fairly decent weapon. It has a lot of recoil to it, but it is a bolt action, so that's kind of irrelevant. 7 shots, it's a sniper. I think it's going to be a fairly usable weapon. I'm interested to seeing if these guns get added to Arena, which I would love to see it. Horde Beacon, apparently it counts the number of participants, which is interesting. That's cool. The gas mask filter status, just to like head off of talking about Arena, the dead zones really need to be expanded upon. Because I like the idea of a dead zone. I really like the idea. I think it could work very well. The problem is, none of the maps have a really good one. I don't know who even plays Yukon, really? I played a little bit in single player, but who the fuck plays Yukon or even cares about it? Washington is the UFO, and as far as I know, it still only spawns like the Shadow Stalker and Rails, so it's pretty worthless to go there. Like, it's just a more difficult Scorpion 7 that not many people go to because you have to have a certain item. And then PEI is at one farm, and I don't even know if anything spawns there. I just found it by accident when I was running through the field and almost died to it. And I didn't really even bother to spawn in any gas masks or anything to look around. I just fucking said, okay, I'm not going to go there anymore. But like, I would really love to see the dead zones get expanded upon. Like, maybe make where Seattle itself is just this big dead zone where you see, like, it was portrayed as you need to have special gear, and then when you go in, you and your team have to go in quick, get what you want, and get out. And that's just not the case with the current dead zones. It's just, oh cool, I can just solo this because there's a handful of zombies, and it's a really small area. It's not like a full-on raid where it's like, do we have the ammo? Do we have the medical equipment? Do we have enough filters? Do we have this and that? Are we prepared to run into another raid group? Like, it's not this big deal. It's like, I have soloed it in single player, and I imagine if the structures wasn't so weak in multiplayer, I imagine I could have soloed it in multiplayer without any problems. So I really think the dead zones need to be expanded upon and brought more into the in-game status they're portrayed to be. Improved unplayed characters show high-tier skill set items. I don't understand what that means, but okay. Unity update. That single player, I mean, if you play single player from time to time, then that'll work. The oxygen to slowly burn at very high altitudes. Is this like your oxygen meter? Like if you go up too high in a airplane, will you just start to die from, like will you start losing oxygen and eventually start dying from it? I haven't tested this. I only tested the guns, but I think that is very interesting. Scoped recoil benefit to not apply as much in third person. I assume that means the aiming down sights is not going to lower your recoil as much in third person anymore, which is interesting because currently PvP in Unturned is heavily defender advantage. If you're defending and someone pushes you, you have a giant advantage because you just peek out in third person and it's just, oh yeah, they're dead. which, I mean, yeah, it does need to be some changes, but I'm not going to say much on the matter. Vonia magazine to be refillable with 12 gauge shells. We are talking about the 8 rounds, right? Not the one with 2. I'm not completely caught up on the shotgun lingo in Unturned because shotguns are pretty crap compared to rifles. Base map quality to change in editor when painting, whatever. Vonia fire rate and Bulldog calling card spread. I might have to look back into that, but I imagine there's going to be a buff in general. Object fuel / water storage not respond properly. Is this like the fuel and water in the storage? Because I have noticed what little multiplayer I have played that the respawning is really weird. And I think that's mostly it. Rain color changing when using night vision. Interesting. Oh, so the blunt force was not spawning on Washington. That's interesting. And I don't care because the blunt force is such a bad weapon when we're comparing them to rifles. But whatever, I'm sure it'll work alright. Let's see. A few large objects which need to be seen from extended ranges are now rendered past the view limit. That's cool. That's pretty neat that you can see landmarks from further away. Of course, I have played Washington a lot, so I just know where I'm going by default. So it's not really going to affect me very much. But I guess I can see some players using it, and if it's just like one building, I don't think it's really going to impact frame rate much. I think it's going to have like almost no impact on frame rate, which is very good. This week the update was mostly ready to go last weekend, so I've been powering through another 90 new objects, wrapping them up aside from whatever few miscellaneous things are required. Finishing the level on that front, the map itself is coming along quite nicely, not too long away now. Now, I do want to talk about this. Apparently there's a new map. I'm very interested in seeing this because currently Unturned Survival is horrible. Now, Unturned is an evolving game still. It's still growing, and it's still being changed, which I'm very happy to see. I have been here since Dead Zone, and I have played, to my knowledge, every iteration of Unturned, even when it wasn't called Unturned. And I'm very happy to see where it is now, but the problem is, Survival Unturned is really bad. What I mean is, so far, from what I've played on Washington, the gun spawns aren't the greatest, but I can get around that. I can kind of play around with what guns I find. That's fine. But the big problem is, your base is basically wet paper. And I say this because it's true. Like, one explosive charge, your base is gone. It's like, oh yeah, all that time you spent getting that wood for your base, and even if it's a short period of time that you spent, or a small base, that's a lot of time spent cutting wood, because it takes a stupidly large amount of wood to make even a small base. So what I think, like personally, I think needs to happen is base building needs to be changed to where it doesn't take logs, it takes planks, and the base health is just increased, and it's harder to destroy. Because like I said, just one explosive charge, which isn't the hardest to obtain. It's surprisingly harder to obtain the plunger than it is to obtain the explosives needed. Like, I have played Washington several times. I have seen enough explosives to make... Actually, I've seen enough material to make about 10 explosive charges and a couple of plungers. Like literally, it's not hard to raid a base because they're just so weak, which I really think needs to be changed. It would be nice to see the all everything being changed to where like base building is viable. It's a useful thing. You can build a base and it can survive a raid. And there's still this problem where multiplayer servers have to like do this weird fix for you to be able to place portable generators. So you can't even place sentries to protect your base. And once we start talking about sentries, like they're so easily destroyed. Like the first time the sentry got added, I immediately started testing it. It took 8 shots from a maple rifle, or was it? I think it was a pine rifle, to destroy it. Full health to dead. And you have to you have to get the range find, you have to get the skills. Like it's a lot of work gone in literally 8 bullets from a very easily obtained weapon. So I'm hoping with the new map comes new base building, because without it, the new map is going to be nothing more than something to look at in single player. It'll be interesting to see a Battlefield server maybe like that of Washington, but I just don't think it's going to be very entertaining personally. I would just like to see bases get harder to raid. They get stronger, so you have to actually have your own base. You have to have like resources to spare. Like it's not this small deal. Like it's a big thing to have to raid a base. So I'd like to see that change. I would like to see a couple of other changes, but that's mostly my opinions. What I think these guns can do. But hopefully these guns will get added to Arena. Hopefully bases get made better and survival in general gets improved. Either way, that's the Russian arms update for Unturned. I hope more guns get added, and I'm very interested to see a military update or a civilian update as well. Thanks for watching. I'll make a new video when I get the chance, and maybe I'll try and make a rant about how bad the bases in the Unturned are. That's it for now, though. I'll see all of you in the next video.